It is the midweek edition of the Sportsline Podcast, and we are so very pleased that you have joined us. I'm Bubba O'Neill. Hey, if you haven't noticed, when you watch your favorite sport, Halton, Hamilton, Niagara, it's a gold mine for talent on and off the field. Today, a reminder that when you are first starting out in the media business, when an opportunity is offered, you never say no. For example, look at the list of accomplishments from the Burlington grown and raised product, Eric Smith. Now, although the NCAA and the NBA was not going to be in his future, his love for basketball opened different doors. Well, if he couldn't play, he had the confidence and knowledge to be able to talk about his passion. When the Raptors arrived, no one wanted to cover that beat, but Eric Smith certainly did. Over 25 years later, he's on the microphone calling games, and he has had the rare pleasure of calling this moment.
The Toronto Raptors are NBA champions. A city, a province, a country celebrates. The NBA championship is due north.
Well, I'll tell you, Eric Smith, it is a pleasure to have you in the Sportsline studios and talking basketball. You and I go way back, and I'll tell you, for all the things you've accomplished, I think it's just outstanding. So that's why I want to talk to you about your career, your passion for basketball. Thanks for joining us.
No, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And we do go back quite a ways, quite a ways.
We certainly do. And you know what? Let's start right there. I mean, basketball, it really, especially in our age group, I'm a little older than you are, basketball wasn't the thing for a lot of people back when we were kids.
It wasn't, and I've always said, like, I'm kind of this weird Canadian in that I didn't play hockey as a kid. I played road hockey almost every day, certainly through the winter and whatnot, but never played on the ice. In fact, the first time I even got on the ice, like, not to skate, but to play hockey was, I think, when I was at the radio station as an intern or something and played on the Fan 590 hockey team and didn't know how to stop. I always say I'm the hardest guy on the ice hardest working guy on the ice, because I couldn't stop. I just kept moving and kept going. I'd be crashing into guys and crashing into the boards because I just never played the game. But as a kid, I was the one that was always out. If I wasn't playing road hockey, I was playing hoops in the driveway. I was at the park shooting hoops. I was at a friend's house. I played a lot of baseball as a kid. And I'm this weird Canadian that grew up more so on baseball and basketball being the primary loves and passions. And I don't know if you're going to reference it, but I'm looking at your hoodie, wearing the Lakers sweater. That was my team as a kid, and that's what hooked me at a young age. Being when I was born in the mid 70s, like, I grew up on the Showtime Lakers,
right?
And getting hooked at a young age in the early 80s with Magic Johnson and with Kareem and with Byron Scott and Michael Cooper, and the list goes on, James Worthy, et cetera, getting hooked onto that sport, then seeing Jordan come in, and it just kept rolling. And that's where the love was just sort of ingrained in me. And as you kind of outlined it off the top in the little bio there, the little intro, I played and I was okay. But when I was trying out in the high school team, there were guys that were way better than me. And it didn't help that at 5'9", the guys that were trying out, there was a 6'5" point guard. He's like, okay, well, I'm not making it if he's got more talent than me and he's got about, 6 more inches, if not more, 7, 8 more inches. So when I didn't make the team, that didn't necessarily end the passion.
This is Notre Dame and Burlington.
Notre Dame and Burlington. Yep. Ryan Kelly was the guy that was ahead of me. We're still friends to this day. I was just playing tennis with him last summer. But it didn't end the passion for me. And to me, it kind of opened a door to, like, all right, well, I started doing some PA in high school. And I started, I played other high school sports, just not basketball, but I still stayed up with the sport as a fan. And I kind of had that moment, I guess, at some point, probably around grade 10, 11, where it was like, what if I could do something in sports, even if I don't necessarily have the skills to make it as a collegiate athlete, let alone a professional athlete? And that's where the brain started spinning on, maybe television, maybe writing, maybe something in the media. I don't know. And it kind of led me down that path.
So then you're right. That transitions you into media. You went to Humber College. How'd you get that first break?
You're talking about in the industry?
In the industry, for sure.
So I'll tell you just very, very quickly, because I can kind of blabber on here. You'll have to kind of rein me in here because I can give you long answers. But the high school epiphany for me was just, again, thinking, could I do something in media? Then to me, and the reason I bring this up and I want to talk about it is we're talking almost 30 years later, I still think it's an issue. And I want to almost like turn to the camera and talk to the camera.
Go wild.
It's like kids that are watching, young students that are watching, or even people that are maybe still searching for that break and they're in their early 20s, mid-20s. I hate the fact that there's still this stigma between college and university and diploma versus degree. And I was a guy that was average high school student. Wasn't great, wasn't terrible, kind of right in the middle, like a B student. But I got enough grades at the time to get into a number of universities. And at the last minute, on the day before the college application was due, I remember saying to my parents, my mom was a teacher at the time as well. I said, like, what if I don't get in university? They're like, you're going to be fine. You're going to get into university. And in my brain, even back then it was, you got to get the degree. You got to get a degree. And I started going on these visits to the colleges after putting in this last minute application. I'm like, wait a second. I really like what I'm seeing from Mohawk and from Niagara and from Centennial and from George Brown and from Humber. And part of the reason I chose Humber was because of, A, they were at the time one of the few colleges that had a residence. So I could get that university atmosphere of staying in a residence, staying in a dorm while being on campus, but also because they had an ingrained, built-in, guaranteed placement for an internship.
Wow.
And when I started thinking about that, I'm like, all right, maybe I don't want to go to Carleton. Maybe I don't want to go to Windsor. Maybe I don't go. Like, I got into these places, and I ultimately chose Humber, and it was in large part because of, yes, the dorm and the university life, quote unquote. I started thinking, I don't care about degree versus diploma. I care about being trained properly and hopefully getting a job one day. And if this has got this built-in internship, well, here we go. So I wanted to intern in television. The way the program was set up at Humber was you kind of took a lot of different courses over the first year and a half where you would get newspaper, radio, television, magazine. You started getting into some web stuff. You know, I'm old enough that web was just starting.
I'll tell you.
You know, but then by your second year, certainly the second half of the second year and all of your third year, you essentially took a major. So again, kind of like a university program where you then went print stream or broadcast stream. Mm-hmm. I did broadcast. So I wanted my internship in television. And I ultimately did not get a gig in TV, and I was really disappointed. And I had a teacher come up to me and say, I got a connection at the Fan 590. There's a lot of Humber College grads there. I know one of the guys that's there who's the assistant sports director and an assistant program director. If I give him a call, I think we might be able to get you in. And they made the call, went and had an interview. And, you know, not to sound cliche, but the rest is history because I started as an intern and went from intern to part-time to full-time in less than a year. And it's all just kind of taken off from there and then trying to find ways to internally improve and kind of climb that ladder in various positions over now almost 27 years.
But that's a key point there is that when you did finally get in, and this is what I think a lot of people don't understand, we have this sort of feeling that, oh, you're going to walk into the business and all of a sudden, bang, you're going to get everything that's yours. You were on the other side of the microphone to start.
For 3.5 years as a producer. I started as a producer, like just doing evenings. Well, as an intern, I started, as the coffee runner, and like literally I was going out and getting Gino Retta's coffee back when the Fan was doing stuff with TSN before the Rogers takeover and whatnot. But I still bug Gino to this day that he probably owes me a couple $100 in coffees and Harvey's runs where he would come in late, like for the junior hockey magazine. That was the first show I was working on. I didn't know anything about junior hockey. I didn't know about the OHL. I didn't know about the QMJHL or any of that stuff. But it was an opportunity to work on a show, to book guests, to call guests, to get them for Gino, who was hosting the show. And if Gino came in and was late, hey, you mind just moving my car? And like I was moving cars and going for food runs and heading to Harvey's and getting coffee. And then like an extra shift might pop up to help produce another show on the evenings or the weekends, or to go down to help and hold a microphone, or to just job shadow. And all of these things that you get exposed to if you're willing to expose yourself and willing to do these things. And I was just talking to a kid the other day who happened to be from Humber. He was job shadowing my broadcast partner, Paul Jones. And he started talking to me a little bit more because we were Humber guys. And I said to him, I go, without ever compromising your morals or your ethics, you know in your brain the difference between right and wrong and when something doesn't feel right and whatever. But obviously with that caveat out of the way, without ever compromising what you know what's right and wrong, say no to nothing, as you talked about off the top. Mm-hmm. Because you never know who you might meet, who you might run into. Even when you're doing the shift on the weekend, the boss might come in and you might be one of 3 people in the station, and he or she sees the work you're doing. Or, especially in our industry, definitely happens in news, happens a little bit in entertainment, but it certainly happens a lot in sports as well. The trade that goes down doesn't necessarily happen between 9 and 5. Mm-hmm. It might happen at 6, it might happen at midnight. The guy that, blows out his knee in a game happens at 9:30 at night. They need somebody to cover it. Stories are breaking all the time. And if you're there, there is no bad shift. There is no graveyard shift. There is no you're just stuck on the weekends. No, man, the weekends in sports is a lot of the time when the spotlight's really on. So you can't look at it that way, and you have to approach each opportunity as like this is truly a potential stepping stone or a block to lead to something else. And if you embrace it that way, the sky could be, I don't want to say it is, because it could be the limit for you with the opportunities that come.
Well, I think of a story. I mean, I consider him a mentor still to this day in my years at Sportsnet, and Brad Fay.
Yeah.
And Brad Fay telling me that he used to have a suit jacket in his trunk. Always, when he was not on air.
Right.
And a weekend shift, all of a sudden, someone called in sick, and the question was, who can do this? Who can do sports? And he stepped up, had the suit jacket in his trunk, and said, give it to me. And then the rest is history.
I was just with Brad last night, actually, because we went out after the Raptors' final home game, and we were just sitting chatting, and there was a couple of young guys sitting with us in the business and just kind of sharing advice and whatnot. And I think that's fabulous advice from Brad, because you just never know. Like, I'll give you a couple of other examples. I totally veered away from your question about, starting as a producer, but part of the being ready and being willing was, as a producer, that also opened up opportunities to have more free time to, hey, I can help you on your show. Or, hey, can I go down and do this? Or I'm working during the day producing Gord Stellick's show. It's on from 1 to 4 every day. I'm in there at maybe 10 a.m. I'm leaving at 4:30, but all the games are at night. Can I go down to a game and cover? Could I go down and check out what it's like? And now you start doing that, and you're double shifting, but especially when you're young, maybe you're not married.
All the time in the world.
You got all the time, so why not better yourself? So now I'm forgetting where I was even going with the Brad Fay story, but it's just like, it's again, being ready for so many different things and then exposing yourself to so many different facets. It's part of the reason why, you're still kicking right now. Why? Not only are you talented, but you've done it all. You've done all the different roles. You've produced, you've edited, you've written, you've been on cam, you've been off cam, you've hosted, you've been a reporter. Like, when you've seen all the different sides of the business, and I would say this for any job in any walk of life, when you know what this person and this person and this person do, and more so what they go through and what their pressures are and what their challenges are and whatever else, it makes you have an appreciation for, what I do and how difficult my job is, for what everybody else is doing and how much the teamwork concept of every job, but especially in the types of jobs that we do, so we can understand all of the different facets. And it makes you, I think, a better broadcaster overall and hopefully a better person overall.
And that's so true. Those years I would consider so valuable sitting in the chair at Sportsnet, because I really did understand not only just putting together a show, but being in the chair when the panic is going on. And you know this as well as anyone, especially in those early days at Sportsnet when it was a true regional network.
Right.
And there's Flames broadcast and there's Canucks broadcast. And we got a show Sportsnet Connected on, and let's rejoin here, and the pressures that come with that. But being able to cool your mind and just get it all done. And you're right, because of those years doing that, the years of being an associate broadcaster, it made me a better, I think, guy on air.
Sure.
Because I understood exactly to what you're saying.
Yeah.
I understood what all the other people were doing and all those roles. And
working in live sports.
Oh, my goodness.
And again, it's the same thing that we could say within this industry about anything that's live, whether it's news, entertainment, weather, sports, whatever. But live, I'll steal the line again. I'm referencing my friend and my broadcast partner, Paul Jones. I used to bust his chops, I still do, about the fact that he pretty much only watches sports. Like, ask him about a movie that's come out in the last decade, let alone the last 20 years. He probably hasn't seen it. He might not even ever heard of it. Television, doesn't watch TV. Like, he watches sports. And his line to me has always been, sports is the ultimate reality TV. Like, forget reality TV. Sports is the ultimate reality TV. And live sports, live anything, it hardens you and prepares you for just about anything, because you've got to be able to react, period. Like, you have to be able to improv, find the words. If it's just radio, if it's just behind a mic and it's not your face, you still have to then paint the picture as a play-by-play broadcaster, as a radio host, asking engaging questions and hopefully having entertaining interviews. If you're doing it also on camera, you have to look like you're not nervous. You have to look like you're owning the moment. You've got to look like you're not sweating while somebody's talking in this ear and somebody might be talking in that ear. And there's
20,000 people around.
And there's 20,000 people around you, and you've just got to talk to the red light. That hardens you, and it's only going to come with experience. And the only way you're going to get that experience is by doing it and exposing yourself and putting yourself out there. And that's, I'll tell you the other quick thing too is, again, when I'm talking about the live component, one for sure one of the biggest memories I have, and it's a horrible, horrible moment in our history, obviously, but working in sports and hosting a 4-hour show. Like I was working Raptor broadcast, but on non-nights, I was also hosting the evening show on the Fan. And I was co-hosting with Bill Hayes. His son, Brian, works at TSN Radio. And Bill's a longtime voiceover guy, a longtime broadcaster.
Classic.
And we finish our show on September 10th. I go home to bed. I didn't get home till after midnight. And I wake up to my mother calling me, and she's like, "Are you watching the news?" I'm like, "No, you just woke me up. I was like working late. What do you like?" She's like, "Turn on CNN right now." And boom, the towers in September 11th. Well, then I go on the air that night on a sports radio station in Toronto. And for that night and the next 2-3 weeks, if not longer, we became a news station. And now I'm having conversations, like on the day of the attacks, I'm having conversations about whether World War III is starting or what actually happened and who's responsible and how's the U.S. going to react. How's the
sports shut down.
Sports shut down. And now I'm like, I don't know anything about this stuff, but you have to find the words and find the conversations and just talk and engage people and just be open and just be yourself. And then, okay, that's not just going to last one night. Like I said, it's going to last 2-3 weeks, if not longer, till you eventually kind of find your way back into sports. I was working as a producer, not on air, with Dan Dunleavy, who's now the voice of the Buffalo Sabres, when Princess Diana had the car crash and ultimately died.
Wow.
And for at least a few hours on this sports station, I believe it was a Sunday night, Dan was saying, we have to react. The whole world's talking about this. And now I'm trying to find some expert on the royal family to come on the Fan 590 in Toronto and book a guest on a Sunday. Like, just, again, reacting and exposing yourself to these things, and it makes you better overall in the long run.
You know, and it's amazing that you've found a way to put together two passions, and that is the passion of media. You've had the training, the experience. You love basketball, another passion. Yet somehow, some way, the two passions join, and that's becoming a broadcaster, a sideline guy, all the duties that you've had with the Raptors. How did that all happen?
I'd be completely dishonest if I didn't say there was a huge element of luck in a lot of it. And the reason being is, well, you kind of mentioned off the top, I was here let me back up for a second. I'm graduating, coming out of Humber, starting as an intern in the second year of the Raptors. Year 1, 2, and 3 of the Raptor radio broadcast were on CFRB 1010 in Toronto. Going into year 4, the Fan 590 acquired the rights. That's when they hired Chuck Swirsky and Jack Armstrong to take over as the radio broadcast crew. So I start as an intern in year 2 of the Raptors. Year 1, I'm in the stands. I remember sitting at Copps Coliseum on December 26. You can look it up, December 26 in 1995, when they played against the Milwaukee Bucks at Copps. And it's a little trivia question. Four different venues the Raptors have played at over the course of their history as home games.
I forgot about Copps.
Maple Leaf Gardens, Copps Coliseum, the then Sky Dome, and of course Air Canada Centre / Scotiabank Arena. But anyways, so then year 2, now I'm in there as an intern at the station. I've got an opportunity to start going down and holding the microphone or just job shadowing behind the original Raptor reporters on the Fan 590, Elliot Friedman and George Strombolopoulos. And going into year 3 of the franchise, doing a little bit more, shadowing a little bit more, started doing a radio show with George that lasted 2 weeks before he bounced and ultimately went to CFNY and then on to Much Music and then the career he's had. And then as all of this is happening, suddenly out of nowhere, there's another sports station in Canada, The Score. The Score starts. And what do they need? Hosts, producers, reporters, directors, editors, writers. So they take from Sportsnet, take from TSN, take from The Fan, take from all over the industry, which opens up a ton of doors, which is what ultimately led to, as I said, intern to part-time to full-time in a short time, because I was lucky enough to be one of those guys that was like, oh, crap, we just lost this person and this person and this person, and I filled a gap. So now, after shadowing Elliot and shadowing George and working with Barry Davis as well,
wow,
Fan 590 acquires the rights, and they hired Barry and I to kind of tag team the pregame, halftime, postgame show with Chuck and Jack doing the broadcast. And I don't want to misrepresent this. Barry is a friend, and he's an outstanding broadcaster. Barry didn't know a ton about basketball at the time when he first came in, to his own, admission.
A baseball guy.
He was a baseball guy. He was a hockey guy. He liked basketball, but the teams knew, the sports knew, whatever. But he was a heck of a reporter and was given this opportunity. He's like, you're next in line. We have a beat to cover. It's yours. So they said, Eric, learn under the wing of Barry. Maybe you can help him a little bit with the basketball. He helps teach you a little bit. And after 1 year together, Barry took an opportunity to move to a different station, and suddenly the doors opened for me. And Nelson Millman, I owe him like a ton of I owe him everything.
Amazing
Nelson
man.
was the longtime program director at The Fan, and he came to me after that first season of Barry and I doing it, which was the Raptors' 4th season. So now we're going into year 5 of the franchise, and I'm 25, just about 26. He's like, let's go. Let's see what you got. And I was the full-time host, solo, pre, half, post. And I did it for 7 years, before Chuck and Jack moved to television. And when they left radio to go to TV, I thought I was going to get a chance, and I'm ready to go. Nope. Paul Romanuk. Paul Romanuk is hired with Paul Jones. And I'm like, and not that I wasn't happy for Romy and for Jonesy. I was just like, I thought this was my chance. I'm now like 32, 33. This is my golden moment. And Nelson, like, you're not quite ready yet. And we have an opportunity with a very experienced, excellent broadcaster in Paul Romanuk. We're bringing Paul Jones back, who was the original analyst on CFRB with Mike Inglis, who's now down in Miami calling Heat games. You're still going to do pre, half, and post. It's still a great gig. I'm like, no, you're right, it is. But I was like, man. And after 1 year with Romanuk and Jones, Paul Romanuk decided to leave the job and move with his wife overseas. She was, I believe, with Coca-Cola and got a great opportunity and ended up saying, hey, you know what? You've supported my career for a long time. I'm going to support yours. And he opted to go try and, cut his teeth in media broadcasting, sports broadcasting overseas in London, in England, and be there with his wife, who had this great opportunity. So after one season calling games, he left. And that then opened the door for me to take over with Jonesy. And we've been doing it. We just wrapped up our 19th season together. So
unbelievable.
So
Thousands. It was over 1,000 games. Well, how many games?
Yeah, over 1,000.
Yeah.
Over 1,000. Yeah, well over 1,000. So yeah, it's 19 years on the play-by-play. It's 6, 7 doing pre-half and post, and 27 in the industry overall. So it's just been.
And wasn't there
wild.
a role reversal too? Like maybe you were doing color or Jonesy was doing play, and then it switched, and like. And not special. Like I've said this 1,000 times. That's if I learned anything, and I've learned a heck of a lot in this business, that finding someone to work with that you get along with on and off the court, we'll say, and that you respect, and you get that chemistry. I know when to talk. You know when to talk. It is so hard. It's so much harder than people actually understand, especially when you do become a professional. Yeah. And you develop this relationship, and there's no doubt you do a show with Smith and Joe. Like, tell me about what it's like working with Paul Jones and the relationship you guys have put together over so many decades.
Yeah, it's been fantastic because like my son's now 14 going on 15 this summer. And like it's Uncle Jonesy. He's grown up with Paul. Like we've been friends, let alone we've been broadcasting together. Like we've been doing the games together for 19 years, but we've been doing shows together for over 20 because he was brought in to be a co-host and kind of a guest host back when we were doing the Hoop Show back in the day, which was a weekly NBA show. And essentially Smith and Jones is the Hoop Show. Like it kind of just morphed into changing names. I think during COVID it really happened, where we actually ended up going on daily. For the first year of COVID, we were on for an hour a day. Then we did 2 hours a day. And then as things kind of got back to what we assume is now normal, it was back to a weekly show. But the relationship, like we hang out. Like I used to buy his kids Christmas presents. Every so often will buy my son a present or acknowledge his birthday or whatever, and hang out together. Like we traveled together for 15, 16 years. So the dinners on the road, let alone at home, and hanging out after ball games. And your point about finishing sentences and just having that chemistry is absolutely bang on. Because we're like an old married couple. Like I've actually been with Jonesy longer than I've been with my wife, and as it is my first and hopefully only wife. But like you can't just make that happen. That just creates itself over the years, and that's just something that I think is invaluable. And I hope that those that are the powers that be continue to appreciate and respect that, because you can't just, like I say, you can't just snap your fingers and create that. It develops over time. The chemistry, especially in this business, you can speak to it as well. The chemistry that you have with someone where you have that trust too, that
Trust,
You're not going to leave me hanging,
Yep.
and I'm not going to leave you hanging. You're not going to set me up with a bad question or a bad thought that leads me down a path that ends up coming back to bite me or whatever. And it's gotten to the point, too, where with color versus play-by-play, it doesn't matter, because my ego as well is not one that, if Paul's in the middle of a point, finish your point. I don't need it back because I got to get that call in. Or, just say it. Like, he could be in the middle, like, well, they're running the pick and roll here. Da, 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 da. Nice bucket there by Scotty Barnes. But just keep going. Like, make it conversational, make it natural, so it's not so rigid and strict and whatever. And I think that, too, comes with the trust and checking your ego, that it's not about you. It's about the team and the partnership overall. And I think we've had a chance to let that grow and develop for a long time, and hopefully for another 10, 20 years.
Well,
where's some wood here?
Well, no, and to be honest, I'm in my car a little bit, and I want to hear the Raptor game, or it's a game of the night for me. And if I'm not on the television, I listen to you guys, and it's just normal. Like, really, it's just normal listening to you guys. I associate the Raptors on radio with you two, and it's even great every once in a while to see you on the sidelines with Sportsnet and whatever, doing some sideline work that you've done over the years, especially during the championship run, and I associate you with that as well too. And then all the stuff on Raptors, the pregame, the stuff that you see, and postgame stuff on Raptors TV and the Raptors.com and stuff. I mean, you're just the both of you guys are so immersed in it that it just as I said, it's just normal for me. Now, the funny thing about this business is that you get to work with the people that you work with at the stations, but you also develop relationships. You get to meet people. Sometimes we're a little starstruck, whether we become players or. Yep. I always think about this because I always remember an incident with this individual that sometimes was maybe uncomfortable. And I've seen you do and break down Stephen A. Smith. Like, what's that cat like?
I haven't had a ton of interactions with him, but I have had a few, and he's definitely confident. That's the best word I can use. He's very confident. But that said, he was good about being approachable and to talk to, and it was most of my interaction with him was during the championship run, seeing him, at the various. Whether I've seen him a couple times at the finals when I've covered for Sportsnet other finals not involving the Raptors, and at All-Star games and whatnot, but then during the Raptors run in the Eastern Conference Championship, let alone in the finals. And he was, I think the guys, and you'd be the same way, it's just you get to a point where you get it. You know what I mean? Where for a guy like that, he knows the moment, he knows the magnitude, he knows he's going to be asked to do things, and it's not about, even for a guy with the clout and the cachet that he has, it's not necessarily about the ego of, I'm not going to do that. It's like, sure, what do you need? Let's do it then, But once you're on with him, it's his show. Yeah. It's like, you're just clearly the setup man, ask the question, boom, and let him shine. And that's where you yourself have to recognize those moments too when you're with people. Like, let them have their moment. You ask them to come on for a reason, right? Let them talk. Let them have it. It's not about you, right?
It's amazing because he is. I mean, he's big. Like, not just. I mean, he's a big guy. Actually, he's taller than I think a lot of people think. Yep. But like the basketball knowledge is certainly there. Sure. He's covered. He's been in Philadelphia, been in all the tough markets, and put together this incredible resume. But yeah, I find it interesting because I know sometimes even people I've interviewed, whatever, and I'm like, okay, I feel like I've accomplished a little bit in this business and I'm at this level. But then there's some people that you interview and you're like, okay, this guy is this level, right? So as I said, you try not to get starstruck or whatever. But yeah, I seen you do a couple of interviews with him, and especially because he didn't think the Raptors were going to win the NBA championship. Yeah, they're like, yeah, Steven, yeah, buddy, there he is. I mean, there's the two of you guys at Air Canada Center, probably after a Raptors win.
I think that was Eastern Conference Championship. I'm not positive, but we were breaking it down a little bit, and there, that run in 2019, just getting exposed to so many different people, and the opportunity to talk to so many different people, and obviously, the parade afterwards.
No,
like, it's funny. Just this morning, I was at the dentist earlier today, and the hygienist was talking to me, and she said, "I heard the dentist say you work with the Raptors." She didn't know who I was, which is more than fine. And I said, so we started talking, and then she's like, "Oh, the championship, and that was so fun." And you would have watched some of those games? Like, "Oh, I watched a few of them, and I was broadcasting." I'm like, "Oh," like she didn't really understand the role or whatever. So I pulled up my phone and showed her some of the pictures from the championship, and being on the buses for the parade. So I was like one of just a handful of members of the media and broadcasters that were on the buses. So that moment, like as much as the championship will forever be a thrill, being on that bus and looking out at literally millions of people and coming up University and looking and seeing multiple blocks deep of people, and like I'll never experience that again. Even if the Raptors win the championship again, it won't be like that.
No.
It was just so incredible. Oh. And to think about that run, and I can't believe it's been 5 years since then. That's the wild thing too. Like I mean, COVID kind of killed, I think, the memory for a lot of us in terms of just how like I blink and suddenly I look at my kid and go, weren't you just 8 or 9? And like just time, I can't believe it's been 5 years since, like right now, we'd be talking about the Raptors getting set for Orlando and that first round series. And man, 5 years. But
there was a build-up to it, too. Knocking on the door for a number of years, or teams that people figured this is a team that could go to the finals, and they fell short. And, of course, the big trade that everyone, oh, my goodness, Kawhi Leonard is playing with the Raptors. And then, as you said, capping it off with 2019 and that championship. But we are somewhere right now. Like, I'll tell you, it's been I'm a Hoops fan. It's hard to watch these games right now.
It's been a grind this year. There's no doubt. I'd be lying if I said otherwise. And I think the tough thing about this season is, now I don't know where you were. I'm going to trust that you're going to be honest enough. At the beginning of the season, I felt that the Raptors had a legit chance to be not just a play-in team, a playoff team. And I remember saying, they're probably not top 4. In fact, I'm pretty positive they're not top 4, but could they battle for 5, 6? At the very least, they're in that 7, 8, 9, 10, and they got a chance. That's where I looked at, because I looked at the year that Scotty had last year wasn't great, but it was still good coming off his rookie campaign. You lost Van Vliet, but you still had Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby, you have Jakob Poeltl, you draft Grady Dick, you've got some pieces around. Dennis Schroeder came in. I'm like, this looks like a decent team. Again, might not be a championship contending team, but it's a playoff team in my mind.
For sure.
They get off to a bit of a rough start. They end up making to me, there's almost, Bubba, like 5 teams in this 1 year. You have the pre-OG, then you have post-OG, which is also / pre-Pascal. Then you have post-Pascal. Then you have, included with post-Pascal, I guess, the trade deadline where you did make some other minor moves. And then as all of that is happening, you also morph into Scotty gets hurt, Poeltl gets hurt, the injuries start piling up. Like, the team that came out of training camp versus the team that was on the floor for the final home game last night is entirely different. You and I were talking off mic before starting. When the Raptors signed Malik Williams last week, that was the 30th player that has been in a Raptor uniform this year that has played for the Raptors.
Yeah, you can't.
I think the previous career high, franchise high, was 24. 30 guys in a uniform in one season.
And a rookie head coach.
Yeah, for a rookie, it's a great point. For a rookie head coach. I give Darko a ton of credit for just being able to navigate through these more than choppy waters and to try and just still have the same approach, the same mindset, the same mentality. He's got the same smile on his face. He doesn't seem like he's been weathered from this. And that's why I'm cautiously optimistic that, the turnaround could come next year.
Okay, that's perfect. Let me throw this in. If you don't want to answer this question, feel free. We're good. Do you still believe in Masai?
I'll tell you, I do, because I think it would be there's a couple things. I don't think he suddenly just forgot how to be a general manager and a president and build a team and make deals. But I also think it would be disingenuous for me to totally criticize him or anybody within the management team, because I've kind of understood the path. And maybe that means I wouldn't be a good GM, or maybe it means when I look back and say, all right, when the Raptors came out of the Tampa season, and I hate using the word tank. I don't know that it was an intentional tank, but people want to call it the Tampa tank. And they end up getting a top 5 pick. They end up taking Scotty Barnes. Barnes was better, I think, as a rookie than a lot of people anticipated. And he goes out and wins Rookie of the Year. Did that fast track the path the Raptors were on? Maybe. They ultimately end up making the playoffs that year, where I think a lot of people felt, especially after that Tampa, you're like, this is not a playoff team. Well, suddenly, they're in the playoffs. They lose to Philly. Now the expectations are heightened. So now you come into last season with Barnes, with Van Vliet, with OG and Pascal. You're like, it's a playoff team.
Good team.
They're a good team. And they struggled. And they scratched and clawed. but they played right around 500. Not that that's like anything to write home about, but they stayed in the hunt, got into the play-in, had a, 15, 16-point lead against the Bulls, blew it, done. And then, yeah, exactly. DeMar's daughter. And then in the offseason, everything I was led to believe was part of the reason why Fred VanVleet didn't sign the contract right away, like so many free agents, where it's like whatever time it at 5:01, 6:01, whatever the top hour was. And suddenly there's a million signings in the league. It's because these deals have been done. Fred didn't sign his deal for almost an hour or so because my understanding was Raptors thought they had a deal in place. They were going to bring him back. They were hoping to bring him back. Houston came forward with an extra year at crazy money, and he was going to make 40 more money in less years. It's like it's a no-brainer to go to Texas with no state tax, and suddenly Raptors lose VanVleet. Now, is that management's fault? I think they wanted to have the guy back. They were looking to bring it back with the core. And then it's like, well, should you trade Pascal? Should you trade OG? I remember saying myself, I'm not moving them because I want to see what this team can do. And if I'm forced to, well, then I'll make a decision in the season. So, again, I go back to I would be totally disingenuous if I sat here and said, oh, this guy can't do this and this person can't do that. And I understood the moves, and I kind of felt like that's what I would have done as well. And I'll tell you the other thing, too. I just said this to a buddy the other day, and you're a basketball guy. I'd ask you this question. If you look at what the Raptors got for OG and Pascal, if you look at it as a total package, or even if you sort of tweak the package a little bit, okay? If I were to say to you that the Raptors for Pascal Siakam got R.J. Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, and a first-round pick, I think that's a pretty good haul for Pascal Siakam.
Yep.
Okay? Now, the other parts of the trade that I'm not then including, I would then say, all right, for OG Anunoby, you got Jordan Nwora, Bruce Brown, and a high second-round pick. You might go, I might have wanted a little bit more. Maybe could have got a little more, but you got a starter / sixth man, a deep rotation guy that's may end up working, and a second-round pick that maybe carries more value than a first-round pick because you're not locked into a guaranteed contract with the second-rounders like you are with the first-rounders. And then the Pascal portion, but it's kind of flipped again because you got Quickley and Barrett for OG, and you got a first, a second, and two players for Pascal. So some people are left going like, was that enough for Pascal? I look at it cumulatively and go like, I think it's a pretty good haul overall. Because the other thing, too, and I don't want to be guilty of, throwing a guy under the bus or, talking behind his back that he's gone. I never had a problem with OG as a person, let alone as a player. But I don't know that I was prepared to, if I was running the show, pay OG $40 to $45 million a year. So if you're trying to get something before he potentially walks for nothing, which is what happened, unfortunately, with Fred VanVleet, and it happened previously in franchise history with other players too, I think from an asset retention standpoint and trying to stock your cupboard with something, I thought the Raptors did fairly well overall. It's unfortunate that it ultimately didn't play out on the floor, and then injuries aren't an excuse. I think they're a factor in what ultimately unfolded.
Well, and let's be honest, I think we got a little sneak peek of seeing the likes. I remember talking to a friend that lives in Brooklyn, and he said, you're going to love Emmanuel Quickley. And I do. I do. The enthusiasm that he plays with, there's a joy. I don't know. The guy can score, runs that little, he's got that speed aspect I like. I mean, R.J. Barrett, to me, how could you not want him here?
Yep.
The guy wants to be here, and I love that. So I think, and unfortunately, they both had some personal tragedy, so that kind of lent to the long losing streak. But we do see a sneak peek of, I think, what's to come. And I will say this, and people that know me well, I didn't hide this. I thought Pascal's time had come. And what a great story. What a amazing man. What a great example to people. Everything everything he did off the, you can't say a bad thing about him.
I agree.
But I thought his time had come. I did not know, and this, basketball's a sport where you got to have one or two I'm the man's.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Pascal is that guy. That's just my opinion. But you move on, and I think it is time to look forward and look forward to the future, because you can't be great forever. People forget about the Boston Celtics about 5 years ago, how they were awful. They were awful. The Philadelphia 76ers, awful.
Yes.
happens, right? We got a little.
Trust the process lasted a long time for Joel Embiid. And,
yes.
and again, not trying to kill the guy. It's not all on him, but he's had great individual accolades to this point. How far is this team
Nothing.
gone? Right?
Nothing.
So your point is bang on. Like, it has been a grind to some extent. Like, I started, I suppose, at the Tampa year. But, of course, before that was the post-championship season where when COVID hit in March of 2020, the Raptors had the third best record in the entire NBA and were knocking on the door of maybe taking over first overall in the Eastern Conference. They were just behind, I believe, Golden State. I think in the West was the second best record in the league. Like, they were right there without Kawhi Leonard, without Danny Green, and they had that core still together. And all of a sudden, the season shuts down, the world shuts down. They get shelved for whatever it was, 5 months or whatever or 4 months before the restart in the bubble. Mm-hmm. And they lose in Game 7 to Boston in round 2. Like, that close to advancing to the conference championships again. And who knows? So you follow that with the Tampa year, and it's like the team was on a path. And I think the COVID experience from in 2020, let alone the Tampa 2021, jumbled things so much. Heck, 2022, even when I said Scotty comes in and they make the playoffs, they're playing to 50% capacity while most of the league's at 100. Mm-hmm. Then they're playing to an empty arena when most of the league is playing to full buildings. I think the Raptors have had to navigate through so much that I think it's almost like they've maybe bought a little bit of goodwill, or at least think that they deserved of a little bit. There will be some fans, and I'm not saying they're wrong, saying, hey, maybe they did buy goodwill, but at the end of the day, it still costs X to go, and my season seats went up last year, and they went up again this year, and you know what? I want to see a winning product. But I think there's also a part of the fan base that might be, and I don't mean this with the negative context, but might be spoiled in that, to your point, they were good for like a decade. You don't remember before that when they weren't so good for 5, 6, 7 years, and like this year, I don't know what the final win total is going to be, but I've seen 22-60, and I've seen 16-66, and like there have been some bad years, and I think this fan base, a lot of these people that have been watching for a while now, haven't experienced this in a while, and that's why it hurts so much or it stinks so much, and they want to get it back on track, and hence the angst I think that's out there. I understand it.
It's tough. As Mike Babcock said when he was hired, there's going to be some pain, right? Different sport. But, hey, let's stick it with basketball. A couple quick names that we got to close out with.
Okay.
Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, go.
Unbelievably talented. I think that if I had a ballot, he would, no doubt in my mind, be a top 3 MVP. He might even get my number 1. It's hard to deny what Jokic is doing, but after Jokic, I would put Shai like right on par with, even ahead of Giannis, Luka, Tatum. Like what he's done for Oklahoma City this year. Yeah, okay, Chet's had a heck of a season, but nobody had Oklahoma City knocking on the door of maybe finishing the season as the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. And there's a reason for that, and it's Shai. And that's just what he's done for Oklahoma City, let alone what he's done for Hamilton and for Southern Ontario and for the Canadian national team. He's unbelievable. And the fact that he's still, from what I know of him, and I'm not going to claim to be like personal friends with the guy. I've talked to him a few times over the years, interviewed him. I know him, but he seems like an approachable dude still who has not really changed and allowed the ego to kind of affect who he was. Like, I think he's unbelievable and a great role model for, like, again, I'm speaking as a father now. He's a guy, my kid wants to buy a jersey? Absolutely. You go buy his jersey and you aspire to be a guy like that, on and off the floor.
We had Ron Foxcroft, a man you know very well, sitting in that seat just yesterday. And I'll ask you the same question that I threw to him. You just brought this up as we talk about MVP. Giannis, Luka, Jokic, Embiid, SGA. I think of Rookie of the Year. I think of a man from France and Wembayama.
Yep.
I think of like the MVP. What's happening here? Like the international basketball. Like maybe Americans aren't the best at the sport that they had 2 dream teams that dominated the world. What has happened?
I've talked a lot about this, Bubba, over the course of this season with numerous guests on, and I'm not trying to give a cheap plug. You already brought up Smith & Jones. We've had a lot of guests, and from former coaches to current coaches to former and current players, and the general consensus, I don't want to name names because I don't want to misrepresent or misquote somebody, but the general consensus overall is these coaches and players and broadcasters and writers and everybody else feel like the game isn't being taught or coached to the extent that it once was and that it still is, arguably, in Europe, because the AAU program has kind of changed the way kids are developing. It's become more of a business, and it's more about the highlight reels. It's more about seeing a quick flash of one move and not the overall skill set. It's a guy that might be a good athlete, but is he or she a good player? Is he or she a good basketball player? Do they have a nice jump shot? Do they play unselfishly and pass the ball, move the ball? Or are they just a one-trick pony with the athleticism? They're not creating as many good players, and I think even the mental approach of the game too, there's not as much there as we might be seeing. And I've drawn the comparisons in asking questions and talking about this very topic. I draw the comparisons to what we experienced however many years ago. I want to say it was at least 20, when as a country we had a summit because what's wrong with the game of hockey in Canada? Why are we losing suddenly? And it was, correct me if I'm wrong, you're more of a hockey guy than I am, but it was the Russian and international invasion where they were faster and they were maybe smaller, but they were more skilled. And why can't we as Canadians keep up? And well, how come there aren't more Canadian goalies? What's wrong? More international I think it comes down to, are we creating the best athletes? And maybe I'm bringing up a subject for another podcast with a better guest on a different day, but perhaps what's happening with basketball in the U.S. and the international is what happened, and I would argue has continued to happen with hockey in Canada. And I don't want to hear the hate from the hockey parents or the fabulous Canadian NHL goalies and defensemen and forwards and everything else. But it costs a hell of a lot of money to play hockey in Canada, and there are a hell of a lot of teams from this tier to select to travel to rep to and it's such a business now with 7 and 8 year olds paying thousands upon thousands of dollars and having to try out for teams for a coach that says, if you don't show up for this, you're going to be off the team. And I'm going to they're not allowed to play other sports now. They don't have time or the money to play other sports. Parents are committing to weekends and week mornings. And it's just insane, the business that has become of hockey and the money that's involved. And I think that has derailed the true development of the players and the coaching that needs to be. And I think that might be the case with the AAU program with basketball in the States. Yeah. I might be wrong, but that's my theory.
Well, there's certainly a change, right? It wasn't. It's within our lifetime where they could not be defeated. It was the separation
100%.
Was that wide, right? And now it's right there, right?
Yeah.
To the point that internationals are, I think there's about 150 internationals now playing in the NBA, and many of them being the absolute very best. Yep. Hey, one of the things that you do that's important to you, I know, is there's sort of a giving back, a charitable aspect to you and what you give to the people that follow you and the people that enjoy you and your career. And I noticed something on Instagram that you utilize social media, that February became something that was very important to you that you wanted to share to people.
Yeah, I just was sitting around with my wife late January, and I said, I kind of feel like I want to do something. So I just came up with Feel Good February. And just trying to spread some positivity and spread some vibes, because we all see it. You sometimes will log on and see a motivational quote from somebody that somebody has posted. That's not necessarily my style. I'm not picking up a book of poetry every day or quotes from famous people and writing them on a sticky note or whatever. But it's having conversations like this. It's speaking to people and recognizing that, man, everybody's got a story, and everybody unfortunately has got a lot of good stories and a lot of bad stories and things that are happening in their lives, whether it be health or whether it be jobs or whether it be heartache, whether it be relationship, whatever it might be, everybody's got a story. So if you've got the platform to be able to spread a little bit of positivity and to speak honestly to people about hey, I might be going through something similar, or I understand that you've got something happening, and to just kind of try and lift somebody's spirits. Mm-hmm. And out of that, and it was a totally kind of just fly by the seat of my pants type of thing, Nothing was scripted. I just would turn on the camera every day and like tell a story of something that happened in my life the night before, the morning of, or whatever, and just kind of speak honestly to folks. And I started off telling myself I'm only going to do like 30 seconds, 60 seconds. By the end of it, I'm doing like 5-minute diatribe.
Well, that's your style.
Waxing poetic, you know. But over the course of it as well, I get a lot of people that reached out to me through DMs like, hey, I've got a gift card I want to donate to give away to somebody. Hey, I've got a gift certificate to my restaurant, to my business, to the tattoo shop that we want to give something away. And I took it, well, I know for a fact with a number of the people that reached out, they specifically said, I don't want any mention. This is anonymous. Just say that somebody donated it. I don't want to be tagged. And it was like the goodness out of their hearts, whatever. So it was really cool the way people responded to it. In fact, if anybody's listening or watching this right now, that is a size 15, which I'm not. I'm a size 10, and I wouldn't have kept the shoes anyways. But if anybody's a size 15, I would love to get it to a younger person that maybe doesn't have the means to perhaps afford a really nice pair of shoes. But if it turns out that it's not a young boy or girl that's maybe a high school athlete, if it's a adult, I got a size 15, really nice Adidas pair of shoes that were a pair that were scheduled to be for Precious Achua. And when he left, and I talked to some of the equipment guys with the Raptors, they had a pair of shoes to donate. So they gave me the size 15. And I have yet to, that was part of Feel Good February. I had one person reach out and said, oh, I was a 15, but now I'm a 16, so I don't think they'll fit. I'm like, well, I don't want to send you a small pair. But it's not like they're exchangeable. But it's like, hey, size 15, they're still sitting in my closet.
Calling size 15s. Calling all size 15.
Reach out to me. I don't even care if you follow me. You don't have to follow on social media. Just send me a DM, and we'll get you the shoes.
Got to hook up with you not all that long ago with the Arkells, and they put together a basketball court. What a fun day that was.
That was awesome. What that entire band is doing. Talk about people giving back to the community in both Toronto and Hamilton and Canada overall. But the entire band, and I know Max is out there as much. I mean, they're all out there. I don't want to just single out Max, but I've gotten to know Max better than anybody else in the band. And I think they've just become such an inspiration to young people, just people in general. I'm not even just going to say musicians, because it's, again, we talk about trying to find ways to do for your community and to be involved and to not just be about yourself. And I only wish I had the money or the means to be able to do something similar. Like, how cool would it be to have the means to be able to go put up a tennis court or a basketball court or a playground or something for kids in Hamilton, Niagara, and Halton, and wherever it may be. Like, I would love to be able to do something. So I think it's kudos to them, and I'd be more than happy to be involved if they do it again, and I'll be first in line to help out.
I couldn't believe how many people there. It was awesome, and just to seeing the unveiling of this court and the joy. There was just so much joy in the air that day. I was like, oh man, you're right. I don't know. We don't get into this business for, I don't know, but you do. You want to be able to give back, or you want to be able to put a smile on some kid's face. And the fact that some, kids down there in another part of Hamilton can get on the court, and because what was there wasn't nice as what ended up being built.
I drove by there in the wintertime after it opened up, and just was I was out in the area for some reason. I can't remember. I think my wife sent me on some honeydew errand or whatever to pick something up. And I just realized, I'm like, I'm about to drive by the court. So, again, it was middle of winter, and I stopped, and I looked, and there was a basketball just sitting on the court. Somebody had left it. So I walked out, slushed through in my shoes and whatever, picked up the ball, took one shot, buried it, and got back in the car.
Walked out of the joint.
Yeah. Like, I'm leaving on the make. Always leave on a make.
And in so many ways, Eric, we talk about full circle moments. We talk about, as you said, we don't do this for rewards or the accolades or for the, for any taps on the back and say, oh, Eric Smith is the greatest. But I think a couple of years ago, seeing you get inducted into the Burlington Sports Hall of Fame, and for someone that's known you as long as you, that I've known you, it was awesome. Can you describe that moment?
Yeah, I mean, it was I always catch myself because, again, I don't want to sound cliche about it, but it was definitely one of those pinch me moments because I had no idea that I was even nominated. So when I got the email saying that, like, welcome, I'm like, what? Like, I don't even know how it happened.
That's part of the process, is that someone else can nominate.
I don't even know how it happened. So when it started to come together, and there's also part of me, and again, I don't want to sound arrogant or egotistical about it, but I'm older than I think I look. And so I look at it and go like, I'm then 25 years in and now 27 years into my career. I'm like, isn't the Hall of Fame for like old people? Like where it's like in retirement? Like, so that was special in that I was able to enjoy it while still in my career and while my parents, are still around and to be able to experience it with my wife and son and whatnot and with so many friends that were able to be there. So it was amazing. And the cool thing for me too on a personal level is that it ties into the Hall of Fame is I was born and raised in Burlington, left when I was 18, moved to Toronto, lived in Toronto for over 20 years, and didn't think I'd be back to Halton, to Burlington, whatever. And it was just real estate prices that brought me back. Mm-hmm. But now I'm back in the community where I grew up in, and now I'm going to the same fields and, playing when my kid first moved to Burlington, he's in Bomba. Well, I played in Bomba, that's where I started playing baseball, playing for Burlington Organized Minor Baseball Association. And I ended up coaching in the league and coaching my kid's team and seeing him now, going to schools that I either went to or played against or gyms that I was in. And it's just kind of neat to see that. And then to experience the Hall of Fame ceremony, as I said in my speech, and you were there that night. So anybody that wasn't aware or hasn't gotten to notice it over the course of this 45 minutes or hour, I do tend to kind of ramble on sometimes.
It's okay.
And I was told at the Hall of Fame, like 5-6 minutes for the speech. I'm like, yeah, no problem. And
it wasn't 5 or 6 minutes.
I think it was clocked at just under 19, I think. And at one point in the middle of the speech, I said, I know I'm probably at like 8-10 minutes or something, and my kid, who was, I guess 12, 11 at the time or whatever, he stood up, 13, Dad. I'm like, oh, sorry. I swear I thought it was only like 8 minutes. And I'll wrap it up in like a minute. And it still went on for another 5 or 6 minutes. But standing there with, the Hamilton Bay in the background, and you can kind of see in the distance Dofasco. And that's where my dad worked for over 35 years. And like to be standing there as a Hall of Famer, accepting this award and giving this speech with, there were a lot of just kind
with all the people in the room, Jim Taddy over
Jim
here.
Taddy's there.
You're like, what?
Well, you and obviously Foxy were there as well, and Stephen Foxcroft. And like, I watched and listened to you guys. Yeah. On Halton Sports Week back in the day when I was in high school and you were doing like local cable show and stuff. It's like, it was just, there were so many poetic things and so many cool things about that night and about those moments that I'm fortunate enough to have come up over the course of the career that, again, you hope continues to roll on.
Well, it's been awesome, Eric, and I, as I said, I love turning on the radio and listen to you. Enjoy the game, calling the game with passion, not just a job, doing it because you love it. And we're so fortunate. We are so fortunate. I have to slap myself every once in a while when I'm in a grumpy mood, and I got to think about the fact that we're doing something that we love to do, because much of the world is not in the same situation that we are in. And as I always say, if I walked away from what I did, the line of, or the stack of resumes to take my job would be very, very high. And I know you certainly recognize that. And to know that you're from this area and creating an example to so many others that you can make it. And like you said, you weren't the 90% guy. You weren't the guy getting A+, but you had the passion, you put in the work, and everything came. Opportunities came, doors opened. So it's been fun and awesome to see that.
No, I appreciate that. That's very kind of you to say. And it's again, I'm going to use the line. I don't want to sound cliche about it, but it is about hard work. It's about having that passion and also having the recognition of it could disappear like that. Any job, right? So bring your top effort. And I also don't want to sound disingenuous too. Like even with the Feel Good February stuff and even with recognizing as you do, you tell me I don't have those days? Like where I've woken up on the wrong side of the bed, there's probably more days than there are the good days. And it's trying to find a way to get through it. And I think, again, I don't want to derail the conversation or start down another path because I think we're wrapping up. But it's like the focus on mental health the last number of years as well. I think that's just a recognition for all of us to, hey, you're going to have those bad days, but try to have more good days and try to find your way out of bad days. And listen, I'm, again, as guilty as anybody of this. Say sorry when you screw up or when you've made a mistake or when you've been, unkind to your spouse or your child or whatever. Like we all go through it, but it's just recognizing that, being better for that personally and professionally. And then if we were lucky enough and fortunate enough to have a platform where maybe you can speak to a greater portion of people and be an example to some people, use that platform then and be open with people and honest with people and show them what normal is for everybody, whether you're on camera, off camera, whether you're in this job or that job or whatever walk of life you're in.
You're a good man. You'll join us again?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Eric Smith, love you. That's your Sportsline podcast for the day. And as you've just seen and heard, we love talking sports. And again, we love talking to sports with people that have all kinds of passion. And if you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote the Sportsline podcast, want to hear from you. Please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. And if you do have something to say, please comment, because it makes us better, good or bad. For the wonderful people that make the Sportsline podcast possible, we thank you so very much. And we'll see you tomorrow.